The millionaire's son never swam, until he saw his black nanny do something incredible. The Blackstone Mansion stood majestically in the Hamptons, New York, like a modern palace of glass and Italian marble, surrounded by gardens that looked like living works of art. In the center of the yard, an Olympic-size pool with crystal-clear water sparkled under the summer sun, inviting and perfect. But for 6-year-old Tyler Blackstone, that pool was his worst nightmare. Michael Blackstone, CEO of one of the largest technology corporations in the United States, watched from his office window as his son played alone in the backyard, always keeping a safe distance from the water. It had been 2 years since the accident that changed everything, and Tyler had never gone near any body of water since. "Daddy, can I play on the playground?" Tyler would ask every time friends came to visit, carefully avoiding looking in the direction of the pool. His blue eyes, once bright with childlike curiosity, were now filled with pure panic whenever anyone mentioned swimming. The accident had happened in Martha's Vineyard during the summer vacation. Tyler, then 4 years old, had slipped on the wet edge of a resort pool and fallen into the deep end. For 30 terrifying seconds, he had struggled underwater before lifeguards rescued him. He had not been physically injured, but the psychological trauma had been devastating. Since then, Tyler had developed severe aquaphobia, a pathological fear of water. Baths became daily battles. Rain sent him running indoors in a panic. And the family pool, built especially for him before the accident, remained untouched, a constant reminder of his limitations. Michael had tried everything. Child therapists specializing in trauma cost $500 per session. Hypnotherapists recommended by celebrities promised quick cures. Even a phobia specialist in Los Angeles, who charged $5,000 per week. Nothing worked. Tyler would have panic attacks just from seeing images of swimming pools on television. Nannies came and went like the seasons. Some were excellent caregivers, but didn't understand the complexity of the trauma. Others had experience in child psychology, but lacked the necessary patience. Eventually, they all suggested that Michael consider hospitalization in specialized clinics. "Maybe it's time to accept that Tyler will never get over this," the last therapist had said, her voice laden with professional resignation. "Some phobias are permanent. It's better to focus on adaptation." Michael refused to accept it. He had built a technological empire by solving problems that others considered impossible. He wasn't going to give up on his own son. It was a Friday in July when Premier Childcare called with a different candidate. Zoe Thompson, 29, graduated from Howard University with a degree in child psychology, specializing in play therapy for trauma. Exceptional references from families in Atlanta. Unconventional method, but proven results. Michael almost hung up. Another specialist with empty promises. But something in the description intrigued him. Unconventional method usually meant quackery, but proven results came with verifiable references. Zoe arrived on a Saturday morning driving a modest Honda Civic, contrasting sharply with the Mercedes and BMWs that normally frequented the mansion's driveway. She was an African-American woman of average height, with curly hair tied back in a natural bun, wearing jeans and a simple blouse, but carrying a quiet confidence that immediately caught his attention. "Mr. Blackstone," she said, extending her hand with a firm grip. "I'm Zoe Thompson. I've heard about Tyler and I'm eager to meet him." Michael led her through the interior of the mansion, explaining Tyler's routine, his limitations, the treatments that had failed. Zoe listened attentively, asking specific questions that demonstrated a deep understanding of childhood trauma. "Where was Tyler when the accident happened?" she asked. "Martha's Vineyard, the resort pool." "Who was with him?" "I was on a work call. The previous nanny was distracted on the phone." Zoe nodded, non-judgmentally. "And how did he react immediately after the rescue?" Michael felt the familiar tightness in his chest. "He cried for 3 hours. He wouldn't let anyone touch him except me. He clung to me for weeks." "Understandable," Zoe said softly. "Aquatic trauma in young children creates deep neurological associations between water and mortal danger. Tyler's brain is protecting him the only way it knows how." When they found Tyler in the indoor playground, an elaborate space with slides, swings, and a treehouse that had cost $50,000, the boy was playing alone with toy cars, creating elaborate stories about races and adventures. "Tyler," Michael called gently. "I want you to meet Zoe. She's going to play with us for a while." Tyler looked up, Messy blonde hair, bright blue eyes, a still round child's face. He studied Zoe with the seriousness of someone who had learned early on to evaluate adults. "Hi Tyler," Zoe said, crouching down to his height. "I hear you have some amazing cars. Can I see them?" Tyler nodded shyly, showing her his collection of race cars. Zoe showed genuine interest, asking questions about each vehicle, creating voices for the characters, integrating herself naturally into Tyler's imaginary world. Michael watched for 20 minutes, impressed. Tyler, normally shy with strangers, was laughing and chatting animatedly with Zoe. She had a natural gift for entering a child's universe without condescension. "She can stay," Tyler announced after Zoe said goodbye, as if he had final authority over hiring decisions. Michael hired Zoe that same afternoon, more because of the instant connection she had established with Tyler than because of his confidence in her mysterious methods. He didn't know he was about to witness a transformation that would change not only Tyler's life, but his own understanding of healing, patience, and the power of authentic human connection. The first 2 weeks with Zoe brought subtle but noticeable changes to Tyler's routine. He woke up asking when she would arrive, eagerly awaited their lunchtime together, and began to smile more often. Michael watched these small transformations with cautious hope. Zoe never mentioned water. She never suggested pool-related activities. Instead, she focused entirely on building trust through games that Tyler controlled entirely. "Control is fundamental in trauma recovery," she explained to Michael one night after Tyler had gone to bed. "He needs to feel that he has absolute power over his choices before he can face his fears." Zoe's activities were seemingly simple but carefully planned. Playing with sand in the playground, where Tyler could create mountains and dry rivers. Painting with watercolors, where he could experiment with colors flowing without pressure. Playing with modeling clay that he could mold and control completely. Michael, accustomed to therapists who applied structured and timed techniques, was perplexed by Zoe's approach. She genuinely played with Tyler, as if she were an older friend, not a professional implementing treatment. "When are you going to start real therapy?" Michael asked discreetly. Zoe smiled. "This is real therapy, Mr. Blackstone. Tyler is learning that he can trust me before I ask him to trust himself." During the 3rd week, Zoe introduced something new. After lunch, she and Tyler began having story time in his room. But these weren't ordinary stories. They were narratives Zoe created especially for Tyler, about brave characters who overcame specific fears. "Once upon a time, there was a boy named Leo who was afraid of dragons," she would begin, sitting on the floor of Tyler's room. "But Leo discovered that some dragons were actually very kind and wanted to be friends." Tyler listened with fascination, occasionally interrupting to suggest details or changes to the story. Zoe always incorporated his suggestions, making Tyler feel like he was co-authoring the narratives. Gradually, the stories began to include aquatic elements, but in an indirect and non-threatening way. Characters who discovered magical lakes where special flowers grew. Heroes who found treasures in crystal-clear springs. Adventurers who befriended talking dolphins. Michael noticed that Tyler showed no anxiety during these stories. Water existed as a magical and positive element in Zoe's tales, not as a source of danger. In the 4th week, Zoe did something that completely surprised Michael. "Tyler," she said during lunch, "would you like to help me water the plants in the garden this afternoon? They are thirsty." Tyler hesitated. Watering plants meant a hose, meant running water, meant proximity to the element he feared. But it also meant helping Zoe, who had become his favorite person in the world. "Will you stay with me?" he asked, his voice small but determined. "Always," Zoe promised. Michael watched from his office window as Zoe and Tyler walked through the garden, a small watering can in the boy's hands. Tyler held Zoe's free hand tightly, but he was clearly focused on the task of caring for the plants. When a drop of water splashed on his arm, Tyler didn't panic. He looked at Zoe, who smiled encouragingly, and continued watering. "First time in 2 years he's touched water willingly," Michael murmured to himself, feeling tears well up in his eyes. That night, Tyler excitedly told him about the plants he had helped save, by giving them fresh water. He spoke as if he were a hero from Zoe's stories, someone brave who helped other living things. Michael began to understand Zoe's methodology. She wasn't attacking the fear directly. She was building positive experiences with water in completely different contexts, allowing Tyler to gradually create new neurological associations. In the 5th week, something unexpected happened. Michael came home earlier than usual, coming straight from a meeting that had been cancelled at the last minute. The house was quiet, but he heard laughter coming from the direction of the backyard. Curious, he walked over to the large living room window that offered a full view of the pool area. What he saw left him completely paralyzed. Zoe was at the shallow end of the pool, wearing a simple, modest swimsuit, sitting on the edge with only her feet in the water. More surprisingly, Tyler was sitting next to her, also with his feet dipped in the crystal-clear water, laughing at something Zoe had said. Michael felt his heart race. His son, the boy who panicked at the sight of water on television, was willingly standing in the pool, relaxed and happy. He quietly approached the back door, stopping before he was noticed, wanting to watch without interrupting the magical moment. "See," Zoe was saying, gently moving her feet in the water. "The water isn't trying to hurt us. It just wants to play with us." Tyler imitated her movements, creating small ripples with his toes. "It's warm," he said, amazed. "I thought it would be cold." "Water can be our friend," Zoe continued. "Like in the stories we tell. Remember the prince who found the goldfish?" Tyler nodded enthusiastically. "And they helped him find the treasure." Michael couldn't believe it. 2 weeks earlier, Tyler had cried just from seeing a commercial for a swimming pool on TV. Now he was making ripples with his feet, associating water with magical characters and positive adventures. Then something happened that Michael would never forget. Tyler slipped a little from the edge where he was sitting, causing the water to rise to his knees. For a second, Michael panicked. This was exactly the kind of situation that triggered his son's anxiety attacks. But Tyler didn't scream. He didn't panic. Instead, he looked at Zoe with wide eyes and said, "I'm in the real water." Zoe smiled calmly. "You are. How does it feel?" Tyler considered the question seriously, as if evaluating his own sensations for the first time in 2 years. "I feel brave," he said finally. "Like the heroes in our stories." Michael had to lean against the wall, emotion welling up in his chest. Tears ran silently down his face as he watched his son take his first steps in the water since the trauma. "Would you like to go a little deeper?" Zoe asked gently. "Only if you want to. We can stop whenever you say." Tyler hesitated, but the trust he had built with Zoe over weeks of playing together overcame his residual fear. "Will you hold my hand?" "Always," Zoe promised, just as she had promised on the first day with the watering can. Michael watched, barely able to breathe, as Zoe and Tyler slowly descended into the shallow water of the pool. Tyler held her hand tightly, but his movements were determined, not forced. "Daddy!" Tyler suddenly shouted, noticing Michael standing at the door. "Look. I'm in the pool." The pure joy in Tyler's voice broke Michael's last emotional barrier. He rushed to the edge of the pool, kneeling down to his son's height. "I see you, champ," Michael said, his voice breaking. "I'm so proud of you." "Zoe taught me that water wants to be my friend," Tyler explained seriously. "Like in the stories. It's not haunted like I thought." Michael looked at Zoe, gratitude overflowing from his eyes. "How did you do that?" he asked softly. "Patience, trust, and lots of stories about brave heroes," Zoe replied simply. Tyler always had courage inside him. He just needed someone to believe in it before he could believe in it himself. That night, after Tyler went to bed still talking excitedly about his adventure in the pool, Michael and Zoe sat on the patio overlooking the lit pool. "I need to tell you something," Zoe said, her voice more serious than usual. Michael felt apprehensive. "What?" "I'm not just a nanny with a background in psychology," she began. "I have a PhD in clinical psychology from Emory University. I worked for 5 years at Children's Hospital in Atlanta as a pediatric trauma specialist." Michael was confused. "Then why are you working as a nanny?" Zoe sighed deeply. "Because the child mental health system is broken. Kids like Tyler spend months on waiting lists for overworked therapists who have 15 minutes per session. Parents despair, kids don't get better, and everyone gets frustrated." She looked at the pool where Tyler had performed his personal miracle. "I decided to work directly with families, one case at a time, using methods that really work but that the formal system doesn't have the time or resources to implement." "Methods like what you did with Tyler?" "Intensive play therapy based on trust building," Zoe explained. Instead of 1 hour a week trying to process trauma, I work for weeks building positive experiences that replace traumatic memories. It's more effective, but it requires full-time commitment that clinics can't offer. Michael processed the information. How many children have you helped this way? Tyler is the 13th, Zoe replied. All with different traumas, some from accidents, others from abuse, some from the loss of parents. But the principle is the same, rebuilding the ability to trust the world through secure relationships. And have they all improved? Zoe nodded. Some took longer than others, but yes. Childhood trauma is treatable when approached with patience and the right methods. Michael was silent for several minutes, watching the pool that finally had a purpose again. What do you want to do after Tyler? I haven't decided yet, Zoe admitted. Each family is a huge emotional commitment. I need time between cases. What if I offered you something different? Michael asked slowly, an idea forming in his mind. Zoe looked at him curiously. What if we could create a program that combines your methods with resources that no individual family could offer? Something that makes this approach accessible to more children. Zoe's eyes lit up with interest, but also caution. Go on. A residential center for severely traumatized children. Small, personalized, with staff trained in your methods. Where families can come for weeks or months, not just an hour a week. Zoe considered the proposal. It would be expensive. I have the resources, Michael said simply. And after seeing what you did for Tyler, I know it would be the best investment I've ever made. That night, Michael lay awake thinking about his son who had laughed again in the water, the extraordinary woman who had made it possible, and the possibility of creating something that could help other desperate families. He didn't know he was about to embark on the most meaningful journey of his life. 6 months after that transformative night, the property next to the Blackstone Mansion had been transformed into the Serenity Center for Child Trauma Recovery. What was once a vacant 15-acre property now housed revolutionary therapeutic facilities designed specifically to implement Zoe's methods on a larger scale. The center included 5 residential family homes, each equipped to host a family for up to 3 months during intensive treatment. There were therapeutic pools of varying depths, sensory gardens, art studios, cozy libraries, and recreation areas designed to be both fun and therapeutically beneficial. Tyler, now 7, had become a sort of unofficial ambassador for the center. Not only did he swim regularly, he had even signed up for competitive swimming lessons, but he also helped welcome new children, sharing his own story of overcoming adversity with impressive ease. I used to be really afraid of the water, he told a 5-year-old girl who had arrived the week before with selective mutism after a car accident. But Zoe taught me that sometimes our fears are just bad stories our brains tell us. We can learn better stories. Zoe had become the clinical director of the center, leading a team of 8 specialized therapists whom she had personally trained in her methodologies. What made her most proud was not only the individual results, although they were extraordinary, but the fact that they were scientifically documenting their methods. Michael had funded partnerships with Boston Children's Hospital and Harvard University to conduct longitudinal studies on the effectiveness of intensive play therapy. The preliminary results were so promising that medical journals were beginning to publish their findings. 92% of children treated at the Serenity Center show significant improvement within 6 months, Dr. Sarah Martinez, a Harvard researcher, presented at a national conference on child psychology. Compared to 34% in traditional outpatient therapy, these results represent a revolution in the treatment of pediatric trauma. But for Michael, the statistics mattered less than the everyday moments he witnessed. Like on Tuesday morning when he watched Lucas, an 8-year-old boy who had arrived mute after witnessing domestic violence, laughing loudly as he played in the pool with Tyler and 2 other children from the center. Or on Thursday afternoon when he saw Emma, a 6-year-old girl with severe agoraphobia after a failed kidnapping attempt, running freely through the gardens she would previously have been too terrified to explore. The center quickly gained national attention. Families traveled from all over the country to participate in the program. The waiting list grew monthly, but Michael and Zoe remained committed to never compromising quality for quantity. Every child gets exactly the time and attention they need, Zoe insisted during planning meetings. We are not a recovery factory. We are a place where miracles have room to happen naturally. Michael had discovered that funding the center gave him more satisfaction than any previous business acquisition. Seeing families arrive desperate and leave transformed was a reward that no financial success could match. One fall afternoon, while walking through the center's gardens, Michael heard familiar voices coming from the main pool. Tyler was teaching swimming to twin brothers who had arrived the week before, survivors of a tornado that had destroyed their hometown in Kansas. "Remember," Tyler said with a seriousness far beyond his 7 years, "water is not our enemy. Sometimes bad things happen, but that doesn't mean everything is dangerous. Zoe taught me that we can be brave even when we're scared." One of the twins, who hadn't spoken since the trauma, whispered something to Tyler. Michael couldn't hear it, but he saw Tyler smile and nod encouragingly. "Dad," Tyler shouted, noticing Michael. "Tommy just told me he wants to learn how to float. Can I teach him?" Michael felt the familiar tightness of pride in his chest. "Sure, champ. But remember the rules." "Always with an adult supervising," Tyler added, nodding to Zoe, who watched from a nearby chair with a proud smile. That evening, Michael and Zoe met for their weekly planning meeting, which had become as much a time for strategic discussion as it was for reflection on the work they were doing. "We've been invited to present our methods at the National Congress of Child Psychiatry," Zoe announced. "And 3 universities want to establish programs based on the Serenity model." Michael nodded, but looked thoughtful. "That's amazing, but I have a confession." Zoe looked at him curiously. "When I hired you, I expected you to cure Tyler and move on," Michael admitted. "I never imagined you would completely change my perspective on life's purpose." "What do you mean?" Michael gestured toward downtown, where soft lights illuminated the windows of family homes. "I spent 15 years building a company that gave me everything I thought I wanted. Money, success, recognition. But none of that made me feel truly useful." He paused. "Seeing families arrive broken and leave whole, that makes me feel like I'm finally doing something that matters." Zoe smiled. "Sometimes healing a child means healing the whole family, including parents who have lost faith in themselves." "You saved Tyler," Michael said quietly. "But in a way, you saved me too." 2 years later, the Serenity Center had treated more than 200 families, with a success rate that continued to defy all expectations of traditional psychology. Michael had sold 40% of his company to finance the expansion. There were now 3 Serenity Centers in the United States, with plans for 5 more. More importantly, Tyler had become a completely different child from the one Michael had found hiding from the world 2 years earlier. He was captain of his school swim team, a volunteer mentor at the original center, and was beginning to express interest in becoming a child psychologist like Zoe when he grew up. The Harvard Medical School auditorium was packed for the lecture revolutionizing the treatment of childhood trauma, results from the Serenity model. Michael watched from backstage as Zoe prepared to present 5 years of data that were transforming the field of pediatric psychology. "Nervous?" he asked. Zoe adjusted the microphone with steady hands. "Excited. We finally have enough data to prove what we've always known intuitively." Tyler, now 11, sat in the front row alongside 15 other children who had been treated at the Serenity Center. They had been invited as living proof of the effectiveness of Zoe's methods. "Ladies and gentlemen," Zoe began, her voice echoing through the silent auditorium. 5 years ago, a 6-year-old boy came into my life with such severe aquaphobia that he couldn't take a bath without panic attacks. Today, that same boy is a state swimming champion in his age group." Tyler smiled and waved discreetly from the audience, eliciting warm laughter from the crowd. "But this isn't a story about a miracle cure," Zoe continued. "It's about revolutionizing our understanding of how children recover from trauma when we offer them time, patience, and methods based on building trust." Over the next 45 minutes, Zoe presented data that left the audience of doctors and psychologists in respectful silence. A 94% success rate in 5 years. Average recovery time reduced from 2 to 3 years to 6 to 8 months. Most impressive, 89% of children maintained progress 2 years after treatment. "The difference isn't in revolutionary methods," Zoe explained. "It's in applying known principles, play therapy, trust building, gradual exposure, with an intensity and consistency that traditional systems can't offer." Dr. Robert Chun, Director of Child Psychiatry at Johns Hopkins, raised his hand during the question period. "Dr. Thompson, your results are impressive, but how do we make this financially sustainable? Few parents can afford 3 months of intensive treatment." Michael stood up from the audience. May I answer that question? Zoe nodded, smiling. She knew what Michael was going to announce. They had been planning this moment for months. My name is Michael Blackstone, he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to commanding meeting rooms. Tyler, the boy mentioned by Dr. Thompson, is my son. A murmur rippled through the auditorium. Tyler's story was well known in medical circles, but few knew of the personal connection. Today I announce the creation of the Serenity Foundation, with an initial donation of $500 million, Michael continued. Our goal is to establish 25 Serenity Centers over the next 10 years, offering free treatment to families who cannot afford it. The auditorium erupted in applause. Tyler stood up, proudly applauding his father, followed by all the other children in the front row. But there's more, Michael said, waiting for the silence to return. We are launching the Serenity National Training Program, where therapists from across the country can learn Dr. Thompson's methods through full scholarships. Our goal is to train 1,000 professionals over the next 5 years. Zoe felt tears welling up in her eyes. What had started as a job to help one traumatized child was becoming a national movement that could transform thousands of lives. After the presentation, while Michael talked with potential partners and investors, Tyler approached Zoe. Zoe, he said, with the seriousness that characterized his important reflections. Can I ask you a question? Anything, Tyler. Did you know you were going to be able to heal me when you started working with us? Zoe knelt down to be at his level, considering the question carefully. I didn't know if I could cure you, Tyler. But I knew you had courage inside you, even when you didn't. Tyler nodded thoughtfully. Is that what you do with all the kids? See the courage before they see it. I see the potential, Zoe corrected gently. Every child has a special light inside them. Sometimes trauma covers that light with shadows. My job is to help children remember where the light is. I want to do that too when I grow up, Tyler said with determination. I want to help children like you helped me. Zoe smiled, remembering the terrified boy she had met 5 years earlier. I think you would be an amazing therapist, Tyler. You understand what it's like to be afraid and find courage. 10 years later, Tyler Blackstone, now 21, graduated magna cum laude in psychology from Harvard University. His thesis on peer-to-peer therapy in child trauma recovery won national awards and was published in 3 scientific journals. During the graduation ceremony, Tyler was chosen as the class valedictorian. Standing on the same stage where Zoe had presented her groundbreaking findings years earlier, he looked out at the audience that included his father, Zoe, now his official stepmother, and hundreds of children who had been treated at Serenity Centers. 15 years ago, Tyler began, I was a child who was so afraid of water that I couldn't take a bath without crying. Today, I am a college swimmer and future child therapist. He paused, meeting Zoe's eyes in the audience. This transformation didn't happen because of some miracle cure. It happened because an extraordinary woman believed I could be brave before I believed it myself. She taught me that trauma doesn't define who we are, it just defines where we begin our journey of healing. Tyler gestured to the children in the audience. To those of you who are still on that journey, your courage is waiting for you. Sometimes we just need someone to help us find it. After the ceremony, the family, Michael, Zoe, and Tyler, gathered at home for an intimate celebration. The same pool where Tyler had taken his first courageous steps in the water now reflected party lights, a symbol of complete transformation. So, Michael said, raising a glass of champagne, what's next? Tyler smiled. I'm starting my PhD in September. I want to develop protocols for training children who have recovered from trauma to help other children. Peer-to-peer therapy can be even more effective than traditional methods. Zoe hugged Tyler with maternal pride. From a boy afraid of water to a future revolutionary in child psychology. Your birth mother would be so proud. She is, Tyler said quietly, touching a small photo he always carried with him. And you too have given me the chance to honor her memory by helping other families. Michael looked at the pool, remembering the day that changed everything. You know what impresses me most about this whole story? What? Zoe asked. How something that started with so much fear and despair turned into hope for thousands of families, Michael reflected. Tyler didn't just heal himself, he became part of healing others. As night fell over the Hamptons, the 3 remained on the patio, talking about the future, plans to expand Serenity Centers internationally, and Tyler's PhD program. But for Tyler, the most special moment was when a 7-year-old girl, a new patient at the center, sent a video through Zoe. In the video, she was taking her first steps in the therapy pool, just as Tyler had done years before. "Thank you, Tyler," she said to the camera. "Zoe told me your story, and it gave me the courage to try." Tyler watched the video with tears in his eyes, fully understanding the circle of healing that had been created. His trauma had become his strength. His fear had turned into purpose. And his individual journey had become a movement that would change generations of children. If this story of overcoming and transformation touched your heart, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Have you witnessed how patience and love can heal seemingly impossible trauma? Share your experience of overcoming fears in the comments. Remember, sometimes the person who needs healing the most is right in front of us, just waiting for someone to believe in their courage before they believe in themselves. Comment "Hidden Courage" if you also believe that all trauma can be transformed into strength with the right amount of love and patience. See you in the next video with more stories that prove miracles happen when we don't give up on the people we love.